This is one of those. Can you see it? There's a rule about Newton's apple moment that makes no sense. You know the story, right? How Isaac Newton was inspired to discover gravity after watching an apple fall from a tree. Well, turns out that story is totally made up. There's zero evidence it actually happened. But here's where it gets weird. Despite that, we all love the story. Even as adults, we still tell it to kids as if it's fact. So why is everyone obsessed with this fake story? It's because we need myths like this to inspire us to be creative. Take Leonardo da Vinci, for example. He was an artist, inventor, scientist, engineer, geologist, cartographer, anatomist, and more. But he never finished any of his projects. So how did he manage to do so much and complete nothing? Well, because he was easily distracted. See, he had a mind that worked kind of like a computer program, constantly switching between multiple applications. He just couldn't resist the temptation to jump from one idea to the next. But that's okay because the stuff he left behind inspired generations of inventors, artists, and scientists. Same thing with this guy, Nikola Tesla. He invented alternating current, the induction motor, neon lamps, remote controls, X-ray, the first hydroelectric power plant, and he helped develop the first electric motor. But he didn't have time to finish everything because he was a chronic people pleaser. Whenever someone would come up with a great idea, he'd drop everything and help them build it. But that's okay because his inventions inspired countless other inventors and scientists. And then there's Alan Turing, one of the greatest minds of the 20th century. But before we get to his story, let's start off with a little trivia. What did the German military use to encrypt their top secret messages? Was it invisible ink? Maybe a cipher wheel? No, they used a machine called Enigma. And Enigma could generate billions of letter combinations every second, which means it was almost impossible to break. In fact, when the war began, Britain's best code breakers spent years trying to crack the Enigma code, but they just couldn't figure it out. But then one day everything changed because they recruited this guy, Alan Turing. Now if you're a nerd, you probably already know who he is. The father of theoretical computer science and artificial intelligence. The man considered to be the most influential mathematician of the 20th century. He basically invented everything about computers, programming, algorithms, data encryption, neural networks, etc. But how did Turing break the Enigma code? Well, you'll never guess. He built a special machine called the bomb. And unlike Britain's earlier attempts, the bomb was capable of testing thousands of Enigma settings every second, which meant that instead of taking years to decrypt a message, it only took hours. So suddenly the Germans weren't just winning battles, they were losing them. And it wasn't long before Turing and his team broke the Enigma code for good. And historians agree that thanks to Turing, the Allied forces won the war 2 years earlier than expected, saving millions of lives. But what's really amazing is that despite all of this, Turing was basically unknown outside of mathematics until the 1980s. Even though he single-handedly won World War II, he never got his due. But that's okay because now we have Turing Award, which is given to the best computer scientists each year. And I bet it's no coincidence that it's named after him. Okay, so now let's go back to 1936 because that's when Turing wrote one of the most important papers in history. It's called On Computable Numbers, with an application to the Entscheidungsprobe, which translates to On Computable Numbers with an application to the decision problem. Inside, he explained how a machine could follow a set of rules to perform calculations, which means he invented programming. He called these machines digital computers, and they're basically the same ones we use today. But that's not the interesting part. The interesting part is that in his paper, he wondered if the opposite was possible, if a machine could think. He said if you can make a machine play chess, then that machine is intelligent. But here's where things get strange. In 1950, Turing published another paper titled Computing Machinery and Intelligence, which outlined 6 different ways that a machine could pass the test. For example, He said if a machine could chat with a human and the human couldn't tell the difference, then that machine is intelligent. But again, that's not the interesting part. The interesting part is that in that paper, he had some really bizarre secrets. Like he said, quote, "I believe that in another 20 years or so, we shall have machines playing chess that are superior to the most expert players in the world." And yeah, no kidding, in 1997, IBM's Deep Blue computer beat world champion Garry Kasparov at chess. But here's where it gets weirder. Turing also said that within 50 years we'd have machines doing housework like cooking and cleaning. Quote, "I believe that in the very long run, the machine will be able to do any work a man can do." And yeah, no kidding. Today we have Roomba vacuums, smart refrigerators, and robot chefs. But here's where it gets weirdest. Turing also said that within 100 years, we'd have machines capable of falling in love. Quote, "The development of these total thinking machines will raise ethical issues of the most fundamental kind. For instance, will they have a right to life?" And yeah, no kidding. Today we have dating apps and social media algorithms that literally find you the perfect match. And sure, they don't fall in love, but neither do 99% of humans. So who's to say it's impossible? Anyway, we should probably talk about what happened to Alan Turing after the war. He continued inventing stuff like the automatic computing engine, which was one of the earliest store-program computers. He created software that helped design Britain's first commercial jet engine, and he even taught himself to fly a fighter plane. But he didn't get to enjoy any of it because the British government arrested him for being gay. They forced him to undergo chemical castration, which basically means they made him impotent by giving him fake testosterone shots. Then they gave him the option to either stay in prison or take a lethal injection. So he chose the lethal injection, which was administered on June 7, 1954. Fortunately, in 2009, the British government apologized, granting him a royal pardon. And in 2013, his grave was replaced with a new headstone that reads, quote, "Here lies Alan Turing, computer pioneer and wartime hero. Born June 1912, died December 1954. His pioneering work laid the foundations of modern computing and artificial intelligence." Bombed out. But here's the crazy part. All that time, he was inventing the future. He was also living in the past. See, he was obsessed with World War I, which was still raging inside his head. Like he kept reliving the trenches, the mud, the rats, the snipers, the explosions, the machine guns. In fact, he suffered from something called combat fatigue, which is the result of prolonged exposure to danger and stress. It's a real medical condition that can happen to anyone, even geniuses. And his way of coping was through model trains, board games, crosswords, logic puzzles, and of course, his mother's delicious plum cake. In fact, he was so obsessed with World War I that he went to France to see the battlefields. But it wasn't all bad because that trip inspired one of the greatest works of art ever created. Look familiar? Yeah, that's right. Turing was the inspiration for Stan Winston's Short Circuit. But here's the thing. Despite his mental health problems, he remained one of the most productive scientists of all time. He published dozens of research papers, mentored hundreds of students, and single-handedly invented everything about computers. And yet, again, he never got his due. The world didn't realize how special he was until it was too late. But fortunately, now we have the internet, social media, and video platforms to share his story and honor his legacy. In fact, let me show you something really cool. This is a t-shirt that celebrates Alan Turing. If you want to get one, check the description.